Thanks very much, Alex. It's interesting. I remember something happening to me as if it were yesterday. I was coaching the chief exec of quite a large organization, a building company, I seem to remember. And I said to him, well, he said to me, how disappointed he was with things like the market, things like the systems, the operation of the business. And then he started to move on to his team, the business people that he surrounded himself with. His co-execs, really. And I remember him looking at me and saying, I wish I could clone myself. I wish I could get somebody to clone me so that I could have a team of me's. And I remember looking back at him thinking, would that be such a good idea, to be honest? And he uttered the immortal words, why can't everybody be more like me? Now, 15 years ago that was, perhaps even a little bit longer. And I remember thinking that was probably not a good idea to have everybody thinking and feeling exactly the same way. And that actually got me into behavioral psychology. And now I'm privileged to do this job of standing up in front of people and speaking pretty much all over the world, less so recently, as you might imagine. But I go out as a professional speaker. There was a survey done actually a while ago for the New York Times. And the New York Times asked its readership, what is the biggest fear you have? And what was fascinating, they had a top 10 list of the biggest fears that people had. And what fascinated me is what came third. Wasn't public speaking, by the way. That came top. What came third was my own death. So it has to be said that there are people out there that would consider themselves more fortunate if they died rather than have to stand up in front of people and speak. Fascinating, really. The second one, by the way, on the list of the two above my own death, the second one was walking into a room full of people I don't know. A fate apparently worse than death, both of which I do for a living. So go figure that one. Just as an introduction to me, for those of you who don't know me, and I know that some of you do, and by the way, thanks very much for coming along. Really appreciate seeing some of you guys here. Yeah, on the left of that screen, you can see I've tried to describe some of the things I get up to. I didn't have enough room for the word psychologist. So don't think I'm a psycho, although some people would perhaps disagree with that. Behavioral psychologist is supposed to be there. Trainer, executive coach, all those things that people like me want people to know about me. It's for my own confidence and self-esteem, really. But above everything else, I'd like you to think of me as an educator. An educator, not in the classic sense of the word, not in the teacher sense of the word. No. I think of myself as an educator in the basic and original Latin sense of the word. Oh, Boris Johnson would be so proud of me. The word education and educator is based on a Latin word, educare. Educare. And educare actually means to draw out, to lead out, that which therefore must already be in. So most, if not all of my job is talking to you about stuff you already know. But here's the thing, most people know this stuff or know a lot about this stuff, but they call it a different thing. Perhaps they don't recognize the importance of it, or they know it and it's in the back of their minds and they're not using it, or they know it, but they haven't put it together with something else that they know, the combination of which would really serve them. So it's not intellectually difficult, this stuff. I think it's just fascinating because the subject matter is largely you. To finish my introduction, by the way, for those who don't know me, I'm married to this lady here, the current Mrs. Edwards, as I call her. There have been others, all right? She's the keeper, though. As a lot of people say at this point, you're punching above your weight, sunshine. And I really believe I am. She's so my soulmate, absolute soulmate. By the way, she's also a psychologist. We have fun in our house, I have to tell you. We haven't got so much a daughter as a project. So I'll let you know how it all turns out. By the end of this talk, where are we going with this? Where are we going is this. I want to give you 101 in behavioral psychology to get an understanding, a grounding, if you will, of literally what makes people tick. Also, on the back of that, use that to understand yourself better. The ancient Greeks had it right. They talked about knowing yourself as 50% of your education. Know yourself, understand yourself better, and behavioral psychology certainly gives us a window to ourselves, if nothing else. Also, by the end of this talk, I'm going to teach you to check on just 3 things. Somebody walks into the room, check on 3 things, and immediately understand somebody else's psychological preferences. And we'll work out a little bit why that's so important. But to combine all this stuff together contributes to things like self-esteem, self-confidence, the idea of getting on with people, repairing relationships when necessary, building them when you can, and starting them in that kickoff point. Better understanding, better communication, and better resilience, mental resilience, able to cope with and promote changes in your life. What, in half an hour? Yeah, we're going to touch the surface, and it's going to be a bit of a roller coaster ride because I've got quite a lot to give you, and boy, you're going to get it. So it's going to be whistle stop stuff. But if you want to take it up any further, I'm around. Just give me a shout, and you know what? I'll talk about this stuff until the cows come home. But we've got not quite that long today. Little bit of work I'd like you to do. Hopefully you'll be sitting there with the availability of one of these things called pen, a little bit of paper perhaps, or if you're feeling really brave, stick it in the chat box. Complete that sentence. I'm the type of person who ... What sort of person are you? If I were writing this, by the way, I'd be writing something like, I'm the type of person who quite likes the limelight. I might say something like, I'm the type of person who you'll probably hear speaking rather than listening, which sometimes doesn't serve me. I might, if I was really brave, put something like, I'm the type of person who ultimately really wants you to like me. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, a couple of moments perhaps, about 30 seconds or so to think about that and stick something in the chat box. Go on, if you're brave. I'm going to stop sharing the screen so as I can check out all that wonderful chat box stuff. I'm the sort of person who always writes notes, and rather telling from Scott Clancy that he was the first person to put something there. I'm the sort of person who says, Alexandra, I have high expectations. That's interesting. Good old Andy there in deepest, darkest North Devon. I'm the type of person who wants to push the envelope in every direction. Pretty useful at this time of the year with all those envelopes flicking through your door. I'm the type of person, says Amanda, who loves connecting with people. Me too. I'll relate to that, Amanda. Fantastic. So quite extroverted stuff. Hey, we get some good stuff here. Always wants to learn. Loves connecting with people. Gets things completed satisfactorily. My word. That sounds like my old school teacher, but nothing wrong with that at all, is there? Never stops learning. Who loves talking. You and me both, Amanda from Julia's house. Fabulous. Wants the information to hand and find out about new things. Needs to be busy. Hey, all of the things you're putting here in now don't define you. They can't define you, but they're the things you've chosen to categorize yourself with today, this morning, just for now. And there's nothing wrong, by the way, with categories. Likes to be part of a team. I'm the sort of person likes to take incremental steps to my success, emotionally connect. All these different statements of the sort of people we are our preferences, or give rise to, or an indication of our preferences. We've got some physical things going on. I don't know if you can see there. I'm the type of person who has that salt and pepper thing going on. It works for Richard Gere. I thought it was working for me, to be honest. I'm the type of person who's got the brown eyes. I'm the type of person who's got the Christmas jumper on. Now, all of these categories, I'm happy to self-select. I'm happy to say, yeah, those represent the sort of person I am. And all the things you're putting in the boxes now are the things that you're prepared to categorize yourself with. Doesn't mean to say that's all you are, but it's a good start. And psychology, behavioral psychology, has a great starting point. And I want to share some of that with you today. Think of the people that you work with. Some of you do work with others. Some of you work alone. I know that. Those of you who work alone, then perhaps think of your family, a set of your friends. But if you have a team in your working environment, think of that bunch of people. Think of that bunch of people. And now consider getting those people together and then lining them up in a room, at the back of the room, ideally, in the order of preference. So the person you really like up there on the left, and the person, to be honest, you just sort of jog along with down there on the right, and the people in the middle from wherever they want to be. Would you actually do that? Would you get those people and stand up and do that? I hope you wouldn't, by the way. When I ask this in my live programs, I get people saying, "You're joking. I'm not going to do that." And intakes of breaths and tuts, and you can't make us do. And of course I wouldn't. I wouldn't make anybody do that. And indeed, in the 15 or so years I've been running these programs, I think I've only ever had one person who's stood up and said, yeah, I'm prepared to do that in real time with the people in front of me. If you are prepared to do that and you're sitting there thinking, well, I'd do that. Well, nothing wrong with that to a point, but just channel the fact that you've got high psychopathic tendencies. That's all I'm saying, but just channel that. It would be better if you channeled it rather than, I don't know, ended up in Broadmoor or somewhere. Although psychopaths, if you score high on the psychopathic index, you either end up with some problems in your life or you end up running a FTSE 500 company. Because when you look at those people who are running those companies, they score 10 times more for psychopathy than the general population. About 20% of those people score high for being psychopaths, more so than the 1 or 2% in the general population. So it has its uses. I'm not saying it hasn't, but who do I like, by the way, is already given. You know who you like. You know, without having to state it, who you prefer over and above other people, simply as a friendship basis. You've got a group of people out there who are your friends, who are just your acquaintances, people you know. Some people reckon it's about 150 people that you would call over if you saw them in a pub or perhaps have a quick 5-minute chat with them. That is, I think it's called Dunbar's number. And in that number, in that 150, there will be the people very close to you, the people less so. There is a hierarchy, I'm saying, to the people that we like. What's going on there? Why do we attract those people and they attract us? What's going on? Who do I like? Same question is, who am I like? Certainly when we first meet somebody, who am I like kicks in. In other words, we're looking for people when we first meet them with similarities to us. It's psychological. It's inbuilt 2 million years of genetic programming. Gets us to look at people and go, do you look comfortable? Do you look the sort of person that I could get on with? Do you look threatening? If not, then I might then flick to largely my secondary sense, which is probably the hearing sense. And do you sound okay? Are you a bit quiet? And do I mind that? Or are you really loud and aggressive? Which I might be, and I'm okay with that too. Do you sound okay? Yeah, you pretty much sound okay. And then often there's a component of touch, what you call the kinesthetics involved. Is it a limp lettuce? Or is it a big sort of grip which crushes your hand? Do you feel okay? Well, when those 3 primary senses are sated, then we have something called rapport that starts to build, because we can't think of any reason not to get on with someone. And when people say to me, yeah, but all of this, Andy, it sounds like you're judging people. Oh God, yeah, you are. Now, the word judge has got a bit of a bad rep. When you say, I'm non-judgmental. But when you think of actually what happens within a judging situation, that's all we have as human beings. All we've got is what went on in the past and what's going on in front of us and the comparison between the two. We absolutely judge, and that includes other people. And interestingly, and this blew me away when I worked it out and found out, we get judged by what we do and say, our behavior, not by our intentions. However, we judge ourselves by our intentions, not our behavior. Think about it. Our behavior is outward facing, so other people are subject to that. So sometimes, perhaps often, there's a bit of a miscommunication between what I intended and my behavior and your interpretation. That is the nature of a human reaction. So if you can think, say, and do the same thing, then you're very much more likely to be understood by others. So behavior, interesting. Rather than checking out all your different pictures and photographs and videos going on, what I'd like you to do is all the same piece of behavior. I'd like you all to fold your arms as comfortable as you can. Show me that you're doing it, otherwise I think you've all gone deaf. So fold your arms, however you're folding it. And then just call to mind, start to realize whether you've got your right arm over your left or your left arm over your right, whether you've got your hands poked in or have your fingers poking out. And when you realize that you've folded your arms in your way, try and fold your arms in the diametrically opposite way to that which you've just done. Try and do it how other people fold their arms, how people who are not like you fold their arms. And notice Andy's arms have pretty much fallen off there. If his audio was on, I'd have probably heard a bit of a graunching sound, to be honest. Some people are sitting there doing the okey-cokey. They're going, left arm in, your left. Some of you just given up. Can't say I blame you. And you know what? That is a really great example. By the way, if you're still there, relax, because most people would report that as perhaps being a little bit uncomfortable. We get the great analogy between when you try and be like somebody else, act like somebody else, it's uncomfortable, not only from a physical point of view, but also from a psychological point of view. So remember that guy? Why can't people be more like me? Well, it's basically saying people are folding their arms incorrectly. They should all do it my way. That's not the case. Now, some people will, but most, perhaps other people, perhaps most other people will fold their arms in a different way, and to force them to do it your way can be very uncomfortable, as you've just experienced. So the study of behavior is quite important, and it's not new. It started back in 500 BC that we're aware of with this guy, Hippocrates. Or is it Hippocrates? Is it? Oh, thank you for that. Hippocrates. He came up with the idea that there were 4 basic bodily fluids. There's more than 4 bodily fluids, but these were the 4 basic bodily fluids which gave rise to particular behaviors within the individual. And those behaviors led to what he referred to as pathology or illnesses. So the first type he called the cholerics. Now, these were the people who were tough-minded, getting things done, sorting things out, moving things along at a pace, preferably their pace. If you've got an issue, have a tissue, off you go, get on with things. Now, cholerics were known to have too much yellow bile coursing through, or wherever yellow bile courses through, to be honest. And they were distinctly different from a behavioral point of view to these people, the sanguines. They had an excess of blood coursing through their veins, but it gave rise to a behavior and subsequent pathology of outgoing, fun-loving, eventually manic behavior. And what about our third set of people? Well, Dr. Hippocrates there, for he's known as the first Western doctor, recognized that the phlegmatics, were people who found themselves very concerned with others, wanted to make sure that their impact was not negative and that they got on well with other people. It was important to them to recognize that part. And the astute among you might recognize that the phlegmatic there, that wanted to make sure they get on with people, is actually diametrically opposite behavior from the cholerics, which were tough-minded, get on with it, if you've got a problem, move on. So they're opposites. So if those two are opposites, then Mr. Sanguine down here, outgoing and fun-loving, will have its opposite too. And so it was. The melancholics, known as black bile, serious in approach, a little bit more serious around what was important, sharing information, that sort of thing. So this was what started things off from a behavioral point of view. But many centuries later, it was recognized by this guy, and by the way, Sigmund Freud. It came along and said, you know, the way we're seeing people is wrong. We need to be seeing people in a very different way. And it was Jung that came up with the idea that we have psychological preferences. And basically, he came up with the 3 psychological preferences, how we show up. Are we more introverted or extroverted? Just with a show of hands, do you think I'm more introverted? Put your hand up. Do you think I'm more extroverted? Put your hand up. Yeah. Yeah, extrovert. I'm quite far up on that extroverted scale, which, by the way, suits me in most occasions because it's me and has its challenges elsewhere. So that was the first of 3 preferences. The second of 3 was the extent to which you're a head person or you're a heart person. And by the way, none of these are mutually exclusive. It just indicates from where you start. At the moment, my extroversion combines with my feeling preference, my heart preference. So I'm an extroverted feeler, if that's not a politically incorrect thing to say. The third of 3 is the extent to which, when processing information, I am sensation or intuition processing. The psychological definition of those words, more so than the layman's terms. Sensation literally is I bring information in through my 5 senses, my 5 primary senses, and that's where it stays. The intuition side will be I bring in information, and I've got to bring in through my main senses, but I immediately make it mean something. So it's expansive rather than factual. My 3 words there are extroverted, feeling, and intuition. I wonder what your 3 are. Well, we don't have to worry too much because somebody's done the thinking for us. And what we've got are these 4 basic positions. If you look at the middle of that, you've got the thinking and feeling at the bottom and the top. You're introverted and extroverted. But I like to draw your attention to those words. In the red disc, we have those words: driving, purposeful, etc. Yellow, we've got sociable, spontaneous, some of those words. Green, we've got cooperative, empathic, considerate. Up there in blue, we have rational, logical, measured, and formal. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to stick in the chat box your color order, certainly the color from which you start, not that you're restricted to. This is not about putting people in a box. It's from where you start, your behavioral preference, not your limit. So from where do you start? And if you're really brave, put your second, your third, and your least preferred or least descriptive color style. Just because you put something last doesn't mean to say you can't do it. It just means you start from somewhere else. So stick those in there, just so you remember where you're going with it. Few coming through. I don't think I can see the chat box whilst I'm doing this. I don't know. No, I can't actually see what you're putting because I've got to keep the screen on. Otherwise, you're going to lose those four. So I don't want you to do that. Mine, I kick off in yellow. My secondary kicker is red. My third there is green. And my least set of words are blue. Yours may be very different. In fact, if you kick off in blue first, green second, red third, and yellow last, then we're psychologically, directly and diametrically opposite from each other. What does that mean for our relationship? Do birds of a feather flock together, or do opposites attract? There's some big questions as well. So whatever you've put down there, just recognize from wherever you start is the lens through which you'll tend to see life. Put red down there, then you will be that sort of person that pushes things along and gets things going. Just be aware that when you go into work, about, I don't know, 9 o'clock in the morning, just be careful that by 9:10 you haven't upset everybody by telling them all what to do and where it's supposed to be going. And yellow, don't use too much of that yellow energy. It's the sort of energy that would be misplaced, for instance, at your maid and aunt's funeral, using it as a networking event, giving out cards. Probably not a good idea, but you want to connect. Green, don't use too much green energy, because no matter how generous and lovely you are, you do need your second kidney for yourself. Please don't give it away to somebody who's trying to save the World Wildlife Foundation or something. No, it's yours. Hang on to that one. It's going to be important for you. And blue, you might be sitting there, if you started off in blue, you might be sitting there thinking, well, how the hell can I make a decision based on such a small amount of information? Which, of course, is where our friends in that blue corner tend to go. And that will give you an overview of the world. What is it that you can see from your mountain top? And it's fascinating. What we see, literally what we experience, is largely developed as to who we are, not what we're seeing. I think it was Carl Jung who said, we see the world as we are, not as it is. So what is your perception? If somebody was looking at this particular picture, they may well report, and I would say accurately, that the top grey is darker than the bottom grey, until of course you take out some of the context and you recognize that actually both of them are identical shades of grey. But if somebody was reporting this and somebody was reporting that, then who is actually correct? Well, both of them in their own estimation. And the same with these two. Who is right here? Well, of course they both are. It is a 6 to the person standing on the left as we look at it, and it is a 9 to the person standing on the right. Nobody is wrong, but people are different. They have different perceptions. And of course, in that particular event, what you've got to have is some sort of agreement to come and see it from the other person's point of view. Only then will you understand why they're bleating on about it being a different number than that which you can see. And that, of course, brings us on to the concept of good and bad day. We all have good days and we all have bad days. Some of the days this year have been pretty bad, it has to be said. And when you think about a work setting, that bad day frustration, you might not even know you're having it. Perhaps even to the point you might not know that somebody else is having their bad day, but it changes our behavior. Not in essence, but in the way it's being perceived. Let me explain. Many of you will know what this picture is. It's a picture of Bournemouth, and it's ostensibly Bournemouth on a good day. You know, there's the 7 miles of golden sand and the beautiful azure blue sea, the cornflower sky, the pier thrusting into the sparkling ocean. It's Bournemouth on a good day, of course. And it's the sort of thing that the Tourist Information Centre want you to think of as Bournemouth, because they want you to come to Bournemouth by virtue of its attractiveness. They want you to stay around Bournemouth for longer, and they want you to bring your friends back when you come back and as soon as possible. Bournemouth doesn't always look like this. I don't know if you realize, those of us who live there will recognize the second picture. Sometimes it looks like that. Nothing's changed from a basic point of view. There's the pier, it's still there. The sand hasn't gone anywhere. The sea is still there. The sky, the cliffs, everything in terms of the basic setup is still there. But something is different. And that difference is what happens to our behavior as we go forward. In the physical format that I've seen there, we call that the weather. In the psychological format, we call that mood or overplaying. So once we recognize that we have these good day behaviors, and some of my good day behaviors are my enthusiasm, my fun loving, my energy, down there in the yellow, but specifically to people who aren't like me, and more so to people who don't like me, they won't see that energy. They won't see that sociability and that expression. They'll see a different set of words. I want you to have a look at your primary color, whichever one you put first. Recognize the strengths that are there and inherent in your basic behavior, and recognize that behavior when it's overplayed no longer looks good. In fact, it looks a bit like this. Oh dear. Anybody want to change their primary color by virtue of those words? Oh, it's not me. It's the same basic infrastructure, but overplayed. And the people in your opposite corner will see these words before you recognize you're coming across in that way. Good day and bad day behavior. It's quite important to know the difference. How about owning one of those words? Stick it in the chat box. Look at your primary color. Mine would be yellow. Primary color, look at one of those words and go, yeah, I can see why some people, I don't know why, but they perhaps do, could see me in this particular way. Stick that word in, own the word, go, yeah, you know what, I may not like it and I may not mean it, but I understand how people can see me in that particular way. And that self-awareness thing starts to get more and more important as we start to realize that people see us in different ways than that which we're supposed to be putting out, or that which we believe we're putting out. Yeah, I can see myself very much coming across potentially as frantic. I don't know what your word would be, but that's me. And especially somebody over there in the blue corner will see that in me first. Similarly, I will look across at the blue corner and go, are you happy? And they'll go, yes. And I say, well, kindly inform your face, because I can't see that happening. It's just not there for unemotional. So I see the negative version of otherwise really good things. And that is an important concept. And when you work with me, if you ever work with me, we work on that quite a lot, because to get rid of the good thing, sorry, get rid of the bad word, gets rid of some of the good word too. So we've got to be really careful how we do that. There is therefore a behavioral sweet spot, depending on the person in front of you, as to how that's going to work. There are therefore complementary styles. I've already suggested that somebody who hasn't got the same styles as me, I may have a problem with initially. That's the birds of a feather flock together. But as we develop a relationship, the recognition and realization is that my ability to, in the yellow, build quick relationships and see the big picture is actually complementing the blue weakness of being a bit reserved and focusing on all that little bits of detail, which serves sometimes and not others. And of course, the strength has that, blue has that strength of knowledgeable and thorough through to the end. And yet I will have that issue of, you know what, can we go and do something that's more interesting? I'm bored of this now, can we move on? I lose interest and perhaps I lack detail and focus. So how brilliant it is to get together with somebody in my opposite style. And of course, the opposites hang in there for the green and the red styles as well. So at this stage, this Psychology 101, I wanted to hit you with a few main points before we just move on to the next piece. We are a mixture of all four. I still hear it now. I still hear people saying, oh, I'm a yellow. Oh, she's a red. Oh, he is a green. No, we're not. We are preferring that style. We perhaps start off with that color. I start off in yellow. I have a preference for yellow, but I have a secondary, I have a tertiary, and I have a least preferred, which is available to me. Please don't box me or anybody else in by referring to me as a given color. That's not the case. We're a mixture of all four. And by virtue of all four, each of those has its challenges and of course its strengths. And the more self-aware we become, the more we recognize what those challenges could be and how they might be coming across to somebody, even when we think we're Bournemouth on a good day. Whatever our least preferred color is, remember those 4 colors, whichever you put last or least, perhaps the person who puts that first, that's the person with whom you'll have the biggest initial challenge in terms of a relationship. But there's a really good opportunity to work so well with them because they do stuff differently to you. So good relationships, my suggestion, is all about not only recognizing and understanding that there is differences between us, but actually looking for those differences because they are so valuable. Value those differences and the relationships can and will flourish. Because yes, people ask me, they say, Andy, I have married my opposite. Is that okay? As if I've got permission to give them about who they marry. I often say we either end up disliking, hating these people or marrying them. And quite often I get the response, well, I've actually got a bit of both in my marriage, to be honest. And I get that, and I understand that, nothing wrong with that. And of course, no boxes. So when somebody walks in through the front door, walks in through your office door, walks into your life at a networking event or what have you, how will you know how to read them? Recognizing type. And this is important because how you do anything, it's suggested, is certainly a clue to how you do everything. I remember my wife mentioned, she's also a psychologist. She said, I can get the measure of a man, she said. I get the measure of a man, how they handle a clumsy waiter or waitress, how they handle a rainy day on the barbecue day, and how they handle tangled Christmas tree lights. Once you've got somebody going through those 3 scenarios, you've got a measure of them. You know how they're going to react to pretty much everything in the world. How you do anything is how you do everything. It's a little bit like being left or right-handed. Can you raise the hand that you prefer to work with? Are you left or right-handed? Yeah, again, yeah, right-handed, right. Oh, you've got a lefty there, and unless you're laterally inverted on the screen, Andy. It's about 10 or 11% in the UK that are lefties. All my children are left-handed, by the way. I don't know why. I'm not left-handed. None of my wives have been left-handed, but all my children, three of them, all of them are left-handed. And it's interesting because when Dan and Sam, who are the older 2, sort of about 30 or so, they come around for Christmas lunch, I will set the table the wrong way round. The wrong way round for me, but the right way round for them. And it doesn't take work. That's not calorie burning. It doesn't take a lot of work. What the work is understanding the preference in the first place. So if somebody walks in through the door, if they use their left hand to open the door, you might start to get your suspicions. If you throw an orange to them, they catch you with the left hand, you're starting to think, yeah, this person's likely to be left-handed. And you can prompt behavior in other people to check on your thoughts. So you might say, oh, by the way, Mr. or Mrs. person who's just walked in through the door using your left hand, I wonder if you'd just like to write or try this pen out for me. Then you know, because they'll write with their left hand and you go, right, gotcha. I now know that when I throw an orange to you, it needs to be on the left. And the likelihood is I'm going to set your table that way round, left and right. Same with psychology. And the first thing we look at is body language. Now, if this were a networking event or party, then you get a sense of these couplets going on. Each of these 4 couplets, I'm going to give you a clue now, share the same primary body language. So within each of those 4 clusters, we have 2 people sitting together or standing together, both of whom have the yellow as their primary. We've got 2 people, both of whom have got blue, 2 with both have red, and so on and so forth. I wonder if you can guess which one is which. What do you reckon this one is? What do you think? Stick it in the chat box. They're sort of thinking at each other, aren't they? Thinking, yeah, thinking. Got a lot of blue energy coming from those 2. Bit of blue, they're thinking at each other. They've even got a bit of body language, which is self-protection. Great. They're more self-enclosed. This is called the evaluative stroke. See somebody doing that, they're thinking. It's Mr. and Mr. Blue sitting there right there. What about these 2? Look at these 2. There's lots of movement in that. There's smiles, there's expression, there's fun going on. If you're putting yellow down, then you're top of the class. This is exactly, and I think yellow, by the way, is probably the easiest to work out because it's so expressive. So we got Mr. Blue, Mr. and Mr. Blue, Mr. and Ms. Yellow. What about these 2? Well, they've taken it offline. They've gone one-to-one rather than one-to-many. So there's more of an intimacy there. There's still a little bit of introversion. They're still leaning apart, although she's leaning a bit further forward. There's openness within their body language, but it's also is tempered by a little bit of protection about holding that cup to make sure that nobody can get in too quickly. Although she does look a little bit predatory to me. I don't know. I have dreams about these people. But Green, Ms. and Mr. Green right there. And that leaves our friends in the red corner. They're standing together. He's grabbed her hand with both of his in an attempt to claim her. She's stuck her hand on her hip to say, I'm no pushover. And it's a battle of wills right there. And they love it. They're getting on really well. So we've got body language. And it's very obvious when you start to watch people how they're displaying body language. The second thing of 3 is the extent to which they use a particular tonality. It's no surprise to understand that a certain type will use this sort of challenging, quite abrupt, clear, business-like, almost like they're speaking in bullet points. You know, they're moving things along, quite brief, getting to the point. What about these people who would be much softer, might be called sincere, with perhaps a little, I don't know, perhaps a little pause before they answer, but always with that little smile in their voice too. What about these people who would be quiet, and the modulation wouldn't be particularly inflected? They might have a slower delivery because it's all going on in the head, which may trail off. And then, of course, there's this bunch, Timmy Mallet and his lot, you know, loud, expressive tonality, smiles in their voice, moving. When you start to combine the body language with the tonality, it starts to become obvious, doesn't it? And if you're anything like me, you'll recognize that those are the colors we're talking about. Red first, green, then blue and yellow. Do recognize that red and green are opposites and blue and yellow are opposites. So the only thing we're left now with, from a recognizing point of view, is what do people actually say? Well, what a great way of working out what somebody's color style might be, certainly at the time you're speaking to them, is when you're on the phone to them, say, is this a good time to talk? The response will give you some clues. I've made up some responses. I'm going to whip through them. They look something like this. Hey, is this a good time to talk? Yeah, if you're quick, what do you need? Mr. Red, right there on the other line. If it's no, by the way, it'll be no, not right now. Could you call back later? Bye. That's it. At least you know where you stand, eh? Is this a good time to talk? Yeah, it's fine. How can I help? And you get more of an accommodating sound to that voice. If it's no, by the way, there'll be an apology there. There'll be, well, to be honest, you've caught me at a bit of a bad time. Could I call you back if that's okay? And we get a green vibe from that sort of style, especially when you use that tonation too. Is this a good time to talk? Yeah, it's good a time as any. Good to hear from you, by the way. So what's happening? You've got a bit of yellow energy going on there. And if it's a no, of course, it'll be good time to talk. And they go, oh no, I'm snowed under at the moment. Look, give me a shout after about 3 today, and perhaps we can catch up then. Is that gonna be okay? Does that work for you? And you get a sense of that style. Obviously, I'm overplaying this stuff for the purposes of contrast, but get your version. And blue, is this a good time to talk? Yes, I think so. What's on your mind? And if it's no, not really. Can you put it in an email? I much prefer to deal with it in their time rather than yours. So we get a sense of not only the body language, not only the tonality, but the things people say as well. Recognizing type. So somebody who's supportive, collaborative, and steady, although they can come across to the wrong style as interfering, reliant, and plodding. See how those are working together? I want you to jot down somebody, put it in the chat box, somebody that you believe leads with a green preference. Somebody who leads with a green preference. I want to see who you're putting. Doesn't have to be a real person, by the way. I think Kanga is, from Winnie the Pooh. She's very green, I think. Wendy Darling from Peter Pan. Monty Don, got green fingers as well. Green, yeah. Come on. Who else has got a lot of green? A lot of green energy coming across. Kind. Nice. I think Holly Willoughby, she's got a bit of green going on there. Me, says Nicholas. Yes, but you're not famous, Nicholas. Not everybody knows you, of course, but we'll believe you. We'll believe that. Fabulous. Lorraine Kelly. She's great. I love Lorraine. Lots of green, making sure that she's liked and she's nice and she's kind. She's certainly not some of those people on television who can be a little bit scary. I've gone for Mahatma Gandhi, and I've gone for Princess Di. And the sort of motto you expect is show me you care. Show me you care. That's their motto. Some of the questions you might use is, how can I support you in this? How can I support you? They like support because they give support. And is this something the team is very important to them? Is this something the team might find valuable? So you give them an out there. Same thing with yellow, enthusiastic, lively, and sociable. What on earth could go wrong? Well, this can go wrong. I'm more like this to my 12-year-old daughter. Embarrassing, unrealistic, insincere. I think I'm being all this, but no, I'm being like that. Dad! And dad is a word with at least 3 syllables. Dad! It works like that. So somebody with a famous yellow preference, stick it in the chat box. I want to see who you got. Who have you got with a famous yellow preference? King Julian from Madagascar. Yes, yes. It doesn't have to be real, does it? Graham Norton, yeah. A lot of the comedians can come across with that big yellow personality. Who's the guy on Saturday nights, you know, him. Yeah. Not all the comedians, by the way. Jack D could hardly be called the life and living soul of the party. Jim Carrey, yeah. Some people think I look a bit like Jim Carrey, or certainly they remind them of Jim Carrey. I think it's the big teeth and the expression. You have to nod all at once like that. Michael McIntyre. People think I act a bit like him as well. I don't know. I don't get it myself. Yeah, good yellow energy. Fantastic. So what have we got to say? What's their motto for yellow energy? Well, let's have a look. See if we can find out. Oh, I've gone for these two, by the way. Involve me. Very easily distracted, so keep them involved. Otherwise, they're going to go find somewhere else. They'll be talking to somebody with a lot of yellow, especially on Zoom, and they'll be going, yeah, brilliant, yeah. And you're not letting them have their say, and they'll be going, yeah, okay, yeah. They're starting to lose you. And they go, yeah, okay. Oh, look, shiny things. And you've lost them. They've gone. You've got to keep them involved. This is looking good. How is it for you? Great set of words because there's exclamation there. There's validation in there. How should we team up? They want to team up together to get this done. Use those words with Mr. or Mrs. Yellow, and they will be eating out of your hand. Unless you do it to Mr. Blue, and you'll get some of that. The pedantry, the cold, the boringness of blue. But is that all they are? No, because they are precise, they're logical, they're detailed. They check the contingency, they make sure things don't go wrong by virtue of what's happened in the past. Who out there do you believe starts off with a lot of blue energy? I think this is a harder one. Stick it in there. Stick it in the chat box. Who we got with a lot of blue energy? Oh, I wish I knew who that is. No. Peter Jones, was that yellow or blue? Carol Vorderman, yeah, she flicks between the blue and the yellow. I've seen pictures of Carol Vorderman that don't look particularly blue, and pictures of her that don't look particularly yellow. So Clive Sinclair, the scientists, some of the journalists out there, Jackson, yeah, get that. Bill Gates, almost certainly. Romesh, yeah, I get that, I'm sure. Chris Whitty, yeah, Mr. Scientist. Yeah, that's pretty good. You're good at this. You're very good at this. Okay. Who else we got? Blue preference. The Queen. The Queen of Steve the Madge. We've got some of the journalists. That's Trevor McDonough there. Very blue. Give me the details, they may say. And you can respond with, what other information do you think you need? Because it'll be about the bit that's missing for them, not the bit that's there. You can convince yellow of anything if it's there, but blue, opposite, no, there's something missing here. Ask the question, what are your current thoughts? Look them in the eye, what are your current thoughts? And then let them say their current thoughts. Very easy for us extroverts to go, so what are your thoughts? And then 2 nanoseconds later, jump back in with yours. No, you've got to let them have their thoughts first. Good old blue. Red, our final of the 4, abrupt, dismissive, and impatient. Come on, forthright, purposeful, and fast pace is where we're at. Name somebody with some red preference. You've got to know somebody with some red preference. Who's their famous person with some red preference? Who have we got? Who are we saying? Alex Ferguson, very famous red preference there, using the old hairdryer. Piers Morgan, right at you. Andrew Marr, I get a lot of blue with Andrew Marr, but I get it. Maggie Thatcher, quite famous red. By the way, none of this is Louis Theroux. Yeah, I listened to him yesterday on the radio. None of these are wrong, by the way. Why? Because they're your perception, and your perception will out. Yeah, good old Angela Merkel, some of the chancellors of this world, politicians, that bunch. Yeah, you're doing this. You're cracking this. Some others there, fantastic. So you'll see, it's not actually a difficult thing to work out people with a red preference. I used Maggie there. I've got Sir Sugar there. Be brief, be bright, be gone. Go there prepared, but be prepared not to use your preparation, because they'll make a decision and they'll let you go, and you need to go. When do you want this by? You might ask them. What do you need to happen next? You might ask them. And it moves things along at a pace. Gordon Ramsay, thank you, the wife. See you later. But don't use that language so much. It's important to understand behavioral preferences, because it means that if you know the likes of Gordon Ramsay to be of that style, you're pretty much going to guess where he's going to go when you ask him a stupid question. You get a sense. How you do everything is how you do anything. You can anticipate those behavioral responses even to your questions. You can develop a deeper understanding with these people, and by that virtue, communicate better. And there's nothing wrong with communicating better. And it also has to be said that if you know somebody at a deeper level, you can communicate and influence them more easily, including you can manipulate them more easily. Work with me and I'll tell you how to manipulate people. You'll be surprised. Ultimately, it's about playing nicely together. And that's the important thing from what I've been telling you. I want to give you something before I go, literally in the last minute. I want to give you a 2-page personal profile. I know some of you, I've seen your names up on the screen. I know some of you already do this. I've done this, but it's free. It's a 2-page personal profile on your color order. You either have to remind yourself of the color order you put, or just go to apa.cards, stick it down somewhere, apa.cards, and then do the card game. It'll take you 30 seconds. You claim a 2-page color profile. It comes straight back through to you, and it'll be one of 8 different types. I'm the inspirer. You might be the reformer, the director, the motivator. You might be the supporter, the coordinator. You might be the observer or the helper. Which one are you? Go to apa.cards, do that color profile. You will then be subscribed to my list, from which you can unsubscribe immediately. I don't mind. I just wanted to give you that 2-page profile. If you're really into this stuff, buy the book. There's an advert for you. Go to my website, navigate to the books tab. It's andyedwards.biz, B-I-Z. Navigate to the book tabs, and there you have Why Can't People Be More Like Me, the book, an introduction to behavioral psychology. And one of you who does that, and I mean the APA thing, you get a free 20-page insights discovery profile. These are weighty old things. All about you. It's my favorite book. It's all about me. This one would all be about you. It's about 20 pages. And I will also, in the new year, give you a 45-minute debriefing session with you, which I charge out at £300. That, for one of you today, will be for free. In order to do that, all you got to do is go to that color profile, download that color profile at apa.cards, claim it, then email me and tell me you've done it. And tell me your type as well. Once you've done that, you're in it to win it. And I will let you know if you've won that £300 package, which is a free full color profile, completely unique, along with that little session. Let me leave you with this thought before I go. I wanted to give you a grounding in behavioral psychology. I've ticked that box. I've given you that. You should be able to understand yourself better at a more scientific basis. You should, with those 3 things, be able to read others immediately, such that you can apply this to life, not just the things I'm putting there. And do unto others not as you would be done unto. If I did unto others as I would prefer to be done to, I'd be arrested. I can't do some of that stuff that I love. I much prefer to stay out of jail and do unto others how they would be done unto, which presupposes you've thought a little bit about your impact. It presupposes you've thought a little bit about them and their preferences. And to that order, you connect at a far better level for both of you. Thanks very much for listening. Really appreciate it. Goodbye for now. Thumbs up if you enjoyed. That's all I'm asking. I'm not, normally